Greetings and welcome to my very first ever tutorial on rendering and lighting a very simple scene in Carrara 7 Pro. My name is Jim T-Shirt, yes that is my last name, and you can find me at renderosity.com under the name of JT411. So here we are in Carrara's assembly room, and I've got a very basic scene set up here. This is Victoria 4 from Daz, heavily modified by me of course, and a simple backdrop that I actually built in Carrara, and that's really about all there is going on in the scene. Under the scene settings here, you can see that I've got an HDRI map tacked onto the background, as well as a backdrop color, because I don't want to actually see the HDRI map in my image. I just want to use it for lighting. And color I just have set to pure white, and I actually have the scene brightness set to a very pale orange, and knocked up to about 20%. The reason why I have ambient light in the scene is because the first render that I'm going to make here, or actually that I've already made, let's click over here to the render room, used just skylight and not indirect light. So for skylight in Carrara, basically envision an invisible dome around your scene, and wrapped around that dome is whatever you have set to your background here, in this case an HDRI map. And every pixel of that map is basically a tiny light source. And as opposed to indirect lighting, where the light's going to bounce around and come from all directions, skylight just kind of comes from the top, and that kind of forces me to use ambient scene light just to kind of flesh out the rest of the scene. And I just, colored it a pale orange because it complements the character's skin texture very well. You can use any color you want. If you're doing an outside scene, for example, you might want to use a pale blue. And that's really about all there is in terms of the scene setup. I do have a spotlight here. I'll talk about that in a minute. But before I get too carried away, I want to talk about texturing, because this is very important in Carrara, especially if you're coming from Poser. You'll notice if you ever purchased a Victoria 4 character for Poser, and while you're in Poser you looked at her shader tree in the material room, it's this horrible, nasty, tangled up mess of all these crazy shaders and everything. And long story short, you don't need any of that. People, from the Poser and the Daz Studio neck of the woods, they get real crazy with their skin shaders, and applications like VSS or Skin View really are not necessary, because you cannot beat a good high-resolution texture map. And all of the lighting tricks and everything in the world don't really mean much unless you have a good-looking model and a good-looking texture to begin with. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about textures, because that could be a whole nother tutorial, and I'm just simply not knowledgeable enough. But I do want to take a look at a couple of things that I have set up on this model before we get into the lighting. So if you want to look at Victoria's shader tree in Carrara, I just simply, let me pull this up a little bit. I got my model here. Her name is Erica, by the way. Say hi. Just select the geometry, which is just model here. You're going to have to give this a second because I got a lot of things open at the same time and it's going a little slow. And then switch over to the shader room here.